Have you ever wondered why some people can easily provoke you while others can't? You might think it's because of what they say, but Jung would say otherwise. The real reason you're triggered has little to do with them, and everything to do with you. Imagine this. You're in a meeting and someone makes a subtle comment that hits you like a dart. Maybe they question your competence, your maturity, or your worth. You feel your body tighten, your thoughts race, and before you even realize it, you're defending yourself. It feels personal, right? But here's the truth. They didn't touch you. They touched something within you that was already waiting to be touched. We've all been there. A friend makes a joke that stings. A partner says something that shouldn't bother you, yet it does. And you start asking yourself, why do I care so much? That's the moment when Jung's insight becomes a mirror. Because every time we're provoked, it's not an attack from the outside. It's an awakening from the inside. Carl Jung once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. What if being provoked is not a curse but a compass? What if every emotional sting is trying to point you towards something you've ignored, a wound, an insecurity, a truth you've buried under years of pretending to be unshakable? Think about it. What would your life look like if no one could provoke you anymore? Not because you've become cold or indifferent, but because you've finally made peace with the parts of yourself that others used to touch. That's not emotional detachment. That's emotional mastery. This isn't about being perfect. It's about becoming aware. About seeing that every irritation is an invitation to integrate what you've disowned. Jung called this process shadow work, the art of facing what you've hidden from yourself. So before we go deeper into Jung's secret, pause for a moment. Remember the last time someone provoked you. What did it reveal about you? What part of yourself did it touch? If this already makes you think differently, hit the like button and share in the comments. What usually provokes you the most? What if you could walk through the world completely unshaken? Not because you've shut down emotionally, but because you've become so self-aware that no one's words can reach where you've already made peace. Imagine someone trying to provoke you, but their attempt lands softly, like a stone thrown into deep water. The surface ripples, but your depth stays still. Most people imagine peace as the absence of conflict, but Jung would invite us to imagine something far deeper, the kind of inner stillness that remains untouched within conflict. What if your next argument, your next insult, your next emotional trigger could become a moment of self-discovery rather than self-defense? Let's paint the scene. You're in a heated conversation. Someone crosses the line. Maybe they mock your choices, question your intelligence, or remind you of something you'd rather forget. Normally, you'd feel your chest tighten and your words sharpen. But this time, something different happens. Instead of reacting, you breathe. You observe the emotion without becoming it. You realize, this is my shadow being touched. And in that pause, that sacred second between stimulus and response, something shifts. The other person still expects the old version of you, the one who reacts, defends, or retreats. But this time you just look at them, calm and grounded. You've seen through the illusion that their words have power over you. This is not indifference. It's sovereignty. It's what happens when your emotional world stops being an open battlefield and becomes sacred ground. Jung would say that every time you resist being provoked, you're not suppressing emotion. You're integrating the part of yourself that used to need the fight to feel seen. Now, imagine living like that. Every argument becoming a mirror instead of a wound. Every criticism becoming a chance to reclaim another fragment of who you are. That's the what if that Jung's psychology offers us. A life where being provoked no longer means being controlled. Take a moment to visualize it. How would your relationships change? How much energy would you save if you stopped giving your peace away so easily? What kind of person could you become if nothing external could pull you away from yourself anymore? Here's the hard truth Jung would whisper if he were here. The people who provoke you are your greatest teachers. That's the paradox. The ones who irritate you, challenge you, or expose your insecurities aren't your enemies. They're mirrors reflecting the parts of yourself you've refused to see. We live believing that emotional triggers are signs of weakness. Society tells us that being unbothered means being strong. But that's an illusion. True strength isn't built by pretending things don't hurt. It's built by understanding why they do. Jung's psychology turns the whole idea upside down. Instead of escaping provocation, we should study it. Because within every irritation lies the map to our own unconscious. When someone provokes you, your first instinct is to assign blame. They were rude, unfair, disrespectful, and maybe they were. But that's only half the story. The other half lives inside you, in a place Jung called the shadow, the hidden side of your personality that holds everything you deny, reject, or fear to face. When a comment from someone else stings, it's not their words that cut, it's your shadow that bleeds. That's why two people can hear the same insult and react completely differently. One shrugs it off, the other feels crushed. The difference isn't in the words, it's in the wound. And until you understand your wound, anyone can touch it. Jung's insight is disruptive because it forces responsibility back into your hands. It's not comfortable. It means you can't keep blaming others for making you feel something. They only expose what's already there. That's the secret most people never want to admit. The world doesn't provoke you. You provoke yourself through the world. Once you see this, the game changes completely. Every moment of irritation becomes an invitation. What in me is being revealed right now? That question transforms every conflict into a form of therapy, every argument into a mirror, every insult into a lesson in self-knowledge. So next time you feel triggered, don't ask, why did they do that? Ask instead, why did it reach me? That single shift, from accusation to introspection, is the exact moment you begin to master your emotions instead of being mastered by them. Carl Jung was not a man of easy truths. He believed that the most uncomfortable insights were the ones that set us free. His entire theory of individuation, the process of becoming a whole integrated person, depends on our willingness to face what we usually run from, the shadow. And that's where the secret to never being provoked truly lives. Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Most people believe emotional peace is found by avoiding darkness, avoiding difficult people, painful memories, and inner contradictions. But Jung invites us to turn around and walk straight into them. Because only by seeing our darkness clearly can we stop being enslaved by it. This principle echoes through many traditions. The Stoics, for example, taught something remarkably similar. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Both Jung and Aurelius are pointing to the same hidden law. Your emotions don't belong to the world, they belong to you. The world only awakens what already exists within. Even in literature, we find this truth whispered through timeless stories. Think of Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, where the narrator's bitterness toward others reveals not their cruelty, but his own self-loathing. Or consider Shakespeare's Hamlet, tormented not by the ghost of his father, but by the shadow of his own indecision. The provocation always points inward. This pattern repeats because it's universal. Every insult, every criticism, every provocation is a mirror held up by life itself saying, "Here, this part of you still needs attention." When we deny that, we stay reactive, fragile, dependent on other people's behavior for our peace. But when we accept it, we reclaim our power. That's what Jung meant when he said that integration is the path to freedom. You stop chasing validation, stop fearing rejection, stop being manipulated by other people's opinions, because you finally befriended the parts of yourself they used to threaten. So ask yourself, whose words still have the power to shake you? And what does that reveal about the shadow you've been avoiding? Because the moment you bring it to light, it loses its power forever. Most people spend their entire lives reacting without realizing what's truly happening beneath the surface. When someone provokes you, what you feel first is emotion, anger, shame, defensiveness. But emotion is only the signal. Beneath it lies a deeper structure of unconscious patterns quietly dictating how you respond to life. Jung called this structure the complex. A complex is like a psychological knot, a cluster of memories, fears, and beliefs tied around a wound you've never fully faced. And here's the key. Every time someone provokes you, they're not creating the knot, they're just pulling on it. The intensity of your reaction always reveals the size of the complex. The bigger the pain, the deeper the knot. You can see this everywhere. Someone who was constantly criticized as a child might explode when their work is questioned. Another who grew up feeling invisible may feel rage when ignored. What looks like overreaction on the surface is actually a lifetime of emotional residue being touched. Jung believed that if you trace each reaction back to its root, you'll find an unresolved story, one that's asking to be seen. This is why trying to control your temper never works for long. You can't control a reaction that's coming from an unconscious wound. You can only integrate it by recognizing the hidden belief that fuels it. Maybe it's, "I'm not enough." Maybe it's, "I'll be abandoned if I'm not perfect." Whatever it is, that's the true source of the pain, not the person who triggered it. And here's where it gets subtle. The people who provoke you most often are unconsciously chosen by you. They enter your life to reenact the exact emotional patterns you've refused to face. It's as if the psyche keeps arranging the same play over and over, hoping this time you'll see through the script. So when someone gets under your skin, pause before reacting. Ask yourself, what old story is being replayed here? The moment you see that your reaction belongs to the past, not the present, the provocation loses its grip. Because the real battle was never between you and them. It was always between your conscious self and the shadowed parts of you still waiting to be understood. Every person who provokes you is not an obstacle. They're an X-ray. They reveal what's still broken inside you. You can't be provoked by what you've already accepted. The world doesn't offend you. It exposes you. Each reaction is a confession your ego didn't mean to make. Let's slow down on that, because these aren't motivational quotes. They're psychological truths. Jung would say that every emotional eruption is a signal flare from your unconscious. You think you're angry at someone else, but really your psyche is shouting, "Look here! There's something unresolved inside you." You're not reacting to them. You're reacting to the meaning you've attached to what they did. And that meaning is rooted in your story, not theirs. That's why emotional mastery isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about decoding them. When you finally understand that, something radical happens. No one can manipulate you anymore. They can insult, criticize, or ignore you. But instead of collapsing, you become curious. You ask, what part of me is waking up right now? That single question turns every emotional storm into a doorway to awareness. Here's another truth Jung hinted at, but rarely said directly. What triggers you the most often hides your greatest potential. Because your triggers point to where your energy is trapped. Integrate the shadow behind the trigger, and the same energy that once enslaved you becomes your strength. You stop being reactive and start being reflective. You no longer seek to win arguments because you understand that no external victory can heal an internal wound. So let these phrases sink in. You are not angry, you are hurting. You are not offended, you are exposed. You are not being attacked, you are being revealed. These are not signs of weakness, they're invitations to wholeness. Jung once wrote that, "The gold is in the dark." The pain of being provoked is not a punishment. It's the psyche's way of pointing you toward the buried treasure of your own growth. So next time someone presses your buttons, remember, they're not pushing you down. They're showing you where you're not yet free. Here's the paradox Jung invites us to face. You stop being easily provoked not by becoming tougher, but by becoming more vulnerable. That sounds backwards, doesn't it? We think strength means building armor, silence, indifference, detachment. But Jung would argue that real power begins when you stop hiding behind defense and allow yourself to feel what the provocation awakens. Because only what is felt can be integrated. Most people mistake numbness for peace. They believe that if nothing touches them, they've mastered themselves. But numbness isn't mastery. It's avoidance. True peace doesn't come from building walls. It comes from dissolving them. Jung's psychology is full of this kind of paradox. You heal not by rejecting what hurts, but by turning toward it. You stop being provoked when you stop fearing your own emotions. Think about it. The more you try not to feel anger, the more explosive it becomes when triggered. The more you suppress shame, the more easily others can humiliate you. Suppression feeds sensitivity, but integration transforms it. When you welcome the feeling, it loses its need to scream for your attention. Jung often compared the psyche to alchemy, the ancient art of turning base metals into gold. In alchemy, fire doesn't destroy, it purifies. Likewise, emotional discomfort isn't a sign that you're failing. It's the fire that refines you. The person who provokes you is simply the flame revealing what still needs transformation. And here lies another paradox. Peace doesn't mean you stop having emotional reactions. It means your awareness grows faster than your emotions. The wave still rises, but you no longer drown in it. You see the anger, the hurt, the fear, and instead of reacting, you listen. Each emotion becomes a messenger, not a master. So the very experiences that once destabilized you become opportunities for expansion. Every confrontation becomes a chance to integrate more of yourself. What used to offend you becomes sacred data from your unconscious, whispering, "Here's another part of you asking to come home." That's why the people who once provoked you the most eventually become irrelevant, not because you outgrow them, but because you've integrated the parts of yourself they were mirroring all along. Imagine living a life where no one has the power to disturb your peace, not because you've become cold or detached, but because you've finally made peace with yourself. That's the quiet reward of Jung's insight. When you integrate your shadow, you stop needing the world to behave a certain way in order to feel safe. You stop seeking control, and instead, you find freedom. The promise here isn't some mystical calm where nothing ever hurts again. It's something much more real, emotional sovereignty. You can walk through chaos and still remain centered. You can be criticized and still feel grounded. You can be misunderstood and still stay connected to your inner truth. That's what it means to never be provoked again. Not to silence emotion, but to stand so firmly within yourself that no one else can pull you out of alignment. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming a whole person. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection, it means inclusion. You've looked at your darkness and said, "You're part of me too." Once you do that, insults lose their sting, rejection loses its terror. You don't need to prove or defend anymore because you've already accepted every version of who you are. And here's where life transforms. The same situations that used to drain you now strengthen you. Every moment of potential conflict becomes a moment of clarity. You begin to see other people's provocations for what they are, projections of their unintegrated shadows. You no longer take their pain personally. Instead of reacting, you respond with understanding. Sometimes that means setting boundaries. Other times it means simply walking away. But either way, you stay at peace because you're no longer at war with yourself. The emotional reward is enormous. You gain energy that used to be wasted on defensiveness. You gain respect because calm confidence has a gravity people can feel. But most importantly, you gain inner freedom, the kind that no approval or rejection can ever touch. So take a breath. Imagine your life with that kind of calm strength. What decisions would you make differently if you no longer feared judgment or provocation? That vision isn't a fantasy. It's what naturally unfolds when you meet your own shadow and make peace with it. Everything we've explored so far comes together through one of Jung's most powerful psychological models, the process of individuation. It's the journey of integrating the unconscious into the conscious, of becoming a unified, whole self. To Jung, individuation was not a luxury for philosophers or mystics. It was the natural purpose of human life. Every emotional reaction, every provocation, every conflict is the psyche's way of leading us toward that wholeness. Let's break this down clearly. The psyche, in Jung's view, is divided into the ego, the conscious self you identify with, the personal unconscious, your forgotten memories and emotions, and the collective unconscious, the deeper archetypal patterns shared by all humanity. The shadow lives within the personal unconscious. It's the container of everything the ego rejects. When you get provoked, it's usually because your ego has bumped into your shadow. You can visualize it like this. Imagine your consciousness as a circle of light. Everything outside that circle, the fears, insecurities, and denied qualities, remains in shadow. When someone provokes you, They're not introducing something new into your life. They're simply shining a flashlight on what was already sitting just outside your awareness. That flash of irritation or shame is the moment your unconscious becomes visible. Now, most people run from that light. They project the discomfort outward. You made me angry. But the work of individuation asks us to reclaim that projection, to say, no, this anger belongs to me. That shift, though subtle, is revolutionary. Because the moment you take ownership, you begin transforming unconscious emotion into conscious understanding. You become more whole. This process has deep psychological benefits. It reduces chronic anxiety, improves relationships, and builds authentic confidence. But beyond psychology, it holds spiritual meaning too. To integrate your shadow is to reconcile the light and dark within you, to accept that both are necessary for the totality of who you are. So the framework is simple but profound. Every provocation is a moment of revelation. Each one invites you to integrate a forgotten part of yourself. And as you do, the boundary between me and them begins to dissolve, until finally, you realize that no one can truly provoke you, because you've become one with everything that once did. Take a moment now and breathe. Think about the last person who provoked you, the one who made your chest tighten, your thoughts race, your words sharpen. Instead of replaying what they said, ask yourself, what part of me did they awaken? Because that's where your real work and your real freedom begins. Carl Jung didn't promise a painless life. He promised a conscious one. And that's infinitely more powerful. When you understand that every irritation is an invitation to grow, you stop living like a victim of other people's behavior. You stop waiting for peace to come from silence or distance. You realize peace begins the moment you stop running from yourself. That's the secret to never being provoked again. Not indifference, but integration. You can't be shaken by what you've already welcomed home. You can't be hurt by what you've already understood. When your shadow is no longer an enemy, no one else can use it against you. Imagine living that way. Conversations that once made you defensive now make you curious. Criticism no longer wounds, it informs. Conflict becomes creative instead of destructive. You no longer give others the power to decide who you are, because you've already met every part of yourself. That's the essence of Jung's wisdom. Peace isn't found by controlling the world. It's found by understanding your own. And when you truly grasp that, provocation becomes impossible. You'll still feel emotions, but they'll no longer own you. They'll simply pass through, leaving behind clarity instead of chaos. So here's your invitation. For the next 7 days, whenever someone irritates you, pause. Don't react. Don't justify. Just ask quietly, what in me is being touched right now? That's how transformation begins, not in grand moments of enlightenment, but in small conscious pauses. And if this message resonated with you, if something in you recognized this truth, let it be known. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs it, and tell me in the comments, what's the most common trigger that still challenges your peace? Because the moment you name it, you begin to reclaim it. And that's where self-mastery, the kind Jung devoted his life to teaching, truly begins.